How's it going, folks? Stu here. And a late Merry Christmas. How was it? Wow, great to hear. I've been thoroughly enjoying a much needed break. Christmas wasn't quite what we'd hoped. We couldn't do a big family get together because the COVID thing. But over the last few weeks, there have also been a bunch of films coming out in cinemas because that didn't just stop. I've seen a bunch when they came out and I didn't do reviews for them on release, but I still want to talk about them. So welcome to this. I've wanted to start doing some videos like this for a while where I can just quickly go through some thoughts on films that came out that were quite big and you probably want to hear my thoughts on, but I just didn't do a full review for, and I've left it a bit too late to feel like I can warrant doing a full review because everything's been said about them already. And what better time to start them than right bloody now? I'm going to be calling these TLDR reviews, or Too Late Didn't Review reviews, eh? See what I did there? 'Cause it's a bit like Too Long Didn't Read roundups, but I've tweaked it because I'm lazy. So in today's Too Late Didn't Review, we're going to be talking about some big ones that have just dropped. I mean, really, they've only been out for like 2 weeks. I could absolutely just do full reviews on these, but I'm not going to do that because I'm lazy. Really, that's all I've got. Let's chat about 3 films you've no doubt seen a little bit of discourse about online at the moment. Spider-Man No Way Home, The Matrix Resurrections, and Don't Look Up. 3 perfect films which all came out to absolutely no debate. Let's start off with Spider-Man No Way Home, the new Spider-Man film from John Watts, who directed the previous 2 in Marvel's iteration of the Spider-Man films. Big fan of Homecoming, big not fan of Far From Home. Very interested to see what they were going to do with this because of everything that was getting talked about online about this film for the past 2 years. Long and short of it is, they didn't fuck it up. I thought it was a good time. I really enjoyed my time with No Way Home. It's a very nostalgia-heavy film, and it's a very big Marvel film, and those 2 things, as of late, haven't really been working a lot for me. There's been a lot of films out recently that are like, hey, this is something you used to love, so have it again. It's not that it completely ruins films immediately for me, but I am much more on the lookout for something that's doing something a little bit more with that, a little bit more interesting. And to say I haven't really clicked with anything Marvel's done since Endgame would be a bit of an understatement. I'm still waiting on something amazing from them. But Spider-Man No Way Home, on the whole, pretty much delivers in both those regards, which was a nice welcome surprise for me. I didn't hate the nostalgic elements in here that are absolutely the entirety of this film, and it didn't completely crumble under the weight of a lot of the problems I have with a lot of other Marvel films. So colour me satisfied there. It is incredibly dumb, to its detriment, I think. A lot of that stuff I'm willing to go with because it's a big Marvel Spider-Man film, and ultimately I do just want to sit down and watch someone swing for a bit, and I'd be happy. But there are other things which are so crucial to the plot that I can't avoid the fact that they bug me in my head. A lot of that stuff has to do with Doctor Strange, who I still fucking hate. I really don't like that character, and I don't like Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, so sue me. But it also comes down to the cynical side of my brain, which is very much aware at all times of what Marvel and Disney are doing here. And it makes it annoying that it works because I have an attachment to a lot of the stuff in this film, so I'm not an absolute monster. Like, I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, but it does feel a lot like a film in which the plot is just there to get you to the stuff that they want to show you. One thing I was left feeling overall quite bugged with is that I just wish there'd been a bit more creativity with all the multiverse stuff. That's such an insanely big mine of potential ideas that we've seen mined for some really creative stuff in the animated Into the Spider-Verse film. If you're going to drop that stuff and be like, well, we've just opened up a way to infinite alternate universes where people are going to start coming through, it very much highlights the fact that you've just gone for the easy nostalgic route. It would have helped to sprinkle in some other bits, Disney. Would that have hurt too much? Hey, it just made an absolute butt ton of money, so obviously Marvel don't give a shit what this guy thinks. It was good, really fun time, thoroughly entertained, didn't love it. Next film I caught, which is very similarly striking a very kind of nostalgic chord, hopefully amongst the people watching it, is Matrix Resurrections, which is the 4th Matrix film. And I had an absolute hoot with it. You know how I just said mere seconds ago, it's not that it completely ruins films immediately for me, but I am much more on the lookout for something that's doing something a little bit more with that, a little bit more interesting. Matrix is probably the exhibit in what I mean when I say I think it has a place. Like, it really interestingly weaves in all the nostalgic stuff in there. I'm not gonna lie that this film isn't filled with a bunch of nostalgic stuff, but I just thought that the concepts behind that stuff fit really well with this story and make it feel like it's probably, out of all of the nostalgic sort of sequels, rebooty stuff that we're getting lately, feels like the most worthwhile. It gives me the most obvious reason for its existence. The first Matrix, in my opinion, is an absolute masterpiece, flawless. It doesn't miss a beat. Reloaded, I really, really love in a very different way. I think the key that I found to enjoying Reloaded over the first one is accepting that it's a different film that is not going to be able to do any of the insane stuff that the first one's done, just purely because the first one exists, right? Matrix Revolutions is where it really started to drop the ball a lot more for me, purely because I just never found all of the Zion robot apocalypse stuff quite as interesting as all of the Matrix shit, you know, in a franchise called The Matrix. All that to say that this one feels similarly to Matrix Reloaded in the sense that it is a lot of new sort of, I'm going to call them silly because they are quite silly overall, concepts. And I feel like if you really just hated all the sequels from Reloaded onwards because they start getting quite over the top and quite silly, I am not going to lie, you're almost definitely not going to enjoy this one. But I just really connect with filmmakers just making balls to the wall shit with a big budget that clearly means a lot to them and that they just don't really care how it's received. They're just doing what they want to do with the story. I always find that way more endearing than a lot of the kind of cut and paste Hollywood stuff that we get nowadays. It's a similar reason to why I love something like Malignant, which is just crazy. And James Wan took a butt ton of studio money and made something he really wanted to make. I like the way that Lana Wachowski here has sort of done a similar thing. She doesn't shy away from the fact that she didn't really want to make this to begin with, but Warner Brothers wanted to do it regardless of her being involved or not. So why not take her story and do stuff with it that she wants to do and reclaim that story for herself, which is a big theme in here. I loved all of that stuff, and I love the way that that's woven into the story itself in a very meta way, which is going to be eye-rolling to some, but I just find really fun and really interesting. It's unarguably the weakest action-wise of all of them, but I think it's interesting that people latch onto that so much of this. Whereas I don't really think Matrix Resurrections is interested in being the action film that the first one was interested in being. I think it puts a lot more of its eggs in the basket of interrogating what this story is meant to people and what this story means to Lana Wachowski herself. And I just love the end of this film. I thought what it ends up doing with these characters is really, really cool. I just couldn't not enjoy myself with it. And the final one I saw was Don't Look Up, which absolutely I could be doing a full review for because I don't think it's been out for even more than like 5 days at this point, but it's in here anyway. This is a new comedy from Adam McKay, who has been doing these sort of satirical comedies for a while now. The last one he did was Vice. The one before that was The Big Short, and before that he's known for a lot of comedies, Anchorman, all those stuff with Will Ferrell. I've enjoyed pretty much all of Adam McKay's work so far, and I was interested by this one because it's got such a stacked cast. I mean, we've got everyone in this film, everyone ever, but the premise seems quite fun as well on paper. It's a satire about a comet hitting Earth and everyone that should be caring about it not really caring about it and nothing getting done about it. An obvious riff on climate change and now the pandemic, where we've seen people just not believing science. And in the end, this one ended up being the weakest I've seen from Adam McKay in quite a long time. It's not completely devoid of its funny moments. I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't find it funny overall, because there are a lot of bits which I laughed out loud at. There are certain character moments which I thought were really fun, and there are certain ideas which I do think, even though they're very obvious satire, still work as satire. My problem really is that it's just sort of the same satire and comedy jokes and character moments over and over again for 2.5 hours. And it doesn't really do anything with that. I don't think it even knows what to do with that satire other than just like, hey, this is silly and funny and frustrating, right? The end, we're all fucked. Even if I'm laughing throughout at certain things the character said, it's not really adding to much. Like, Timothée Chalamet makes a funny line about potatoes. Made me laugh because it was a funny line, but like, I'm not going to sit here and say it was a great satirical comedy because some people made funny lines about potatoes. I want a little bit more from your film, Adam, especially for 2.5 hours. This film is long. I guess it's kind of telling as well that my favorite parts of this film are just the beginning and the ending, because that's all the idea is. No one's doing bad performances and they're fun overall. A lot of discussion about Mark Rylance's performance. I thought it was hilarious. But yeah, ultimately, past the hour line, I just ended up getting bored. And by the end of this thing, I was just left thinking like, yeah, I agree it's annoying, but what do we do that all for? What was this 2.5 hour film for? And all the stuff that I've always sort of been aware of with Adam McKay's satirical films, more recently with Big Short and Vice, I'm starting to really get annoyed by some of that stuff because the concept just doesn't really have enough strength behind it. So I was left incredibly annoyed by the editing of this film, which feels so frantic and frustrating in a way which 20% of the time feels like it adds to this sense of unease and this ramping sort of paranoia and frustration with everything that's going on. It's a very chaotic film because it's telling a chaotic story, and that's the point of the satire. But the other 80% of the time just feels like you handed the edit over to the intern and they didn't know what they were doing. They'd just seen a couple of YouTube videos. So I overall just sort of felt fine. It's a their film. I didn't have a hugely negative response to it overall, but I didn't really think it was good. It was just in the middle. It's a film that exists, and I'll probably never think about it again. But those are the 3 films I wanted to catch you guys up on. I hope you feel sufficiently caught up. And if you don't, start the video again, motherfucker. But most importantly, what did you guys think about Spider-Man No Way Home, about Matrix Resurrections, and about Don't Look Up? No doubt you got some thoughts. Unless you're bloody no-thought McGee-McGoggin over there in the corner. Get out. Just get out. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you just think, hey, that guy needs to stop and never continue. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see me talk about more shit, go ahead and click subscribe. Links down there for that, and you can find my socials down there as well. Until next time, I'm off to go and honestly probably rewatch Matrix Resurrections. I'm not even ashamed of it. It was a hoot.